Zach and I are having a little bit of close time because if you watch my next Sink Tales, it's going to be on how I've been fostering puppies from the shelter, and Zach's got his nose a little notched out because he's jealous of the little puppies. But tonight the puppy's downstairs and Zach's getting all the attention. Okay, so welcome back to Yvonne Wakefield's YouTube channel, where I have been reading from Babe in the Woods, Building a Life, one log at a time, for how many months, Arturo? Almost a year. We're on the last chapter tonight. And in advance of that chapter, I brought out some graphics that I did during the time at the cabin and my little ledger, which I'll get into a little bit more. But the last chapter, chapter 31, oh yeah, I was just learning to live at the cabin. Totally alone, because I was totally snowed in. I had to backpack out. When I'd go to town, I could only have enough time to do laundry, go to the grocery store and the library. And I saw a guy in the grocery store who was an old miner, and I kind of identified with him. Anyway, so chapter 32 is called Cabin Fever. Now remember, this is like in December. I've been living up there, well, not quite a year. But I've been in the cabin about 3 months, and now I am totally snowed in. Chapter 32, Cabin Fever. Throughout December, it snows nearly every day or night. Snow so thick it stays put on the tire-papered roof and obscures bolts of shakes I have not had time to lay. The evergreens, branch browns, aspen leaf golds, everything takes a powder. The only color in my life is what I apply either indoors with a paintbrush on paper or outside on my cross-country skis as I make up my moves, wobbly snow plows or jerky stem Christies. On matching cherry red cross-country skis I unpacked from the U-Haul, I am the hottest thing in sight. My parka is rouge I apply with abandon over snow-caked mountainsides. At night, the skis rest upright behind the stove. In the morning, they are warm enough to cork down wax smooth. Now, if any of you skiers have you're probably not old enough to know this, but when I started cross-country skiing, you had to warm your skis, you had to put wax on them when it was warm, and then you had to take this corky thing and rub it down. That's what I had to do up at the cabin. The snow is so deep, I wear calf-high insulated snowmobile boots to walk to the outhouse, to fetch wood, and to shovel the porch steps 3 times a day. Every chore packing snow into those tightly laced uppers. Tamarack is the name of the cat. Tamarack tiptoes down the shoveled and icy stair treads, darts under the cabin where he takes a powder in the frozen dirt. The stove burns morning, noon, and night. Being snowbound is teaching me to accept the things I cannot change, courage to know the difference, and wisdom to know if I keep up this frenetic pace much longer, I'll go batty. This new brand of solitude presents new lessons in austerity, tests my sanity and my abilities to survive snow and ice, and long nights begin at late afternoon. If I didn't implore regular self-discipline, I surely would cannibalize my mind. I don't read books that might inspire me to imagine the macabre. I do not wear the same clothes 2 days in a row. I scrub from head to toe in a basin of hot water in the morning and again at night, and brush my teeth the same number of times I shovel the porch on a snowy day. I don't drink coffee anymore after lunch, And usually I'm in bed by 7 reading serious stuff. One night, I opened Betty Dotson's Liberating Masturbation, a meditation on self-love. A pamphlet-like book I ordered by mail. I figured at 19, I should be having sex on a regular basis, even without a partner. It wasn't that I felt the need to, but I assumed that all healthy, young, blue-blooded American women were having buxom and bottom encounters day in and day out, and I didn't want to miss out on being part of the norm. The anatomical parts of these encounters are close at hand, but in this state of celibacy, I lack a partner. That's why I bought Betty's book. It talked about how masturbation is liberating and healthy, and I figured reading it would only prove I was too. Betty herself had illustrated liberating masturbation with pen and ink drawings of vaginas in every shape, size, or form, some exploding like an iris in bloom, or like muscles, or any lively organic matter cracked open. There were tightly rendered clitorises like rosebuds and vulvas flapping free as a jib before it is cinched down to set a course. I wondered if Betty worked from photographs. The drawings were so detailed and precise, I couldn't imagine a model like the creek staying still long enough to render so precisely. Besides, the drawings were in ink, a medium I knew intimately as unforgiving even for minor mistakes because I was copying those vaginas in my own sketchbook, though not as accurately as Betty's originals. Between drawings, the book detailed liberating fingering techniques, which I've tried to follow in bed that night to the T, but soon became so bored I fell asleep reading Liberating Masturbation was more sedating than eating onions and cheese. Remember, onions and cheese was what Annabelle told me to eat when I couldn't sleep. I think reading the book and eating the onion and the cheese were about the same. Yuck. On my way back from town the second week in December, I stopped to chat with Rhonda. Remember, Rhonda is the Mormon mother of 5 kids down below the mountain. She invited me to join her at the Mormon Relief Society meeting the next week. The women in the congregation were gathering to embroider dish towels for church members on mission to hand out as gifts. I accepted the invitation because I flunked sewing in high school home economics and thought this neighborly gesture would be a domestically refresher. After I'd gone through with chainsaws and truck heads, it was time to improve my feminine grade with needle and thread. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Saint Days is located on the outskirts of John Day. Either way, coming or going, I passed by it. By meeting time, 11:30 a.m., I have finished all my errands, am freshly showered, and wear clean jeans and flannel shirts pulled warm from the laundromat dryer. I park alongside newer, cleaner trucks and family sedans. A freshly shoveled path leads to the meeting hall just off the towering church. Past the foyer is a buzz of women who wear dresses and things that would tear on the slightest snag of a branch. Rhonda greets me at the door and after introducing me around asks, "Would you care for some punch?" I really want strong, hot coffee, but accept a Dixie cup filled with something red and sickly sweet. Then we get down to business. In the common room, women pull chairs together to form little sewing pods where they immediately begin to stitch and chat away. My pod, including me, comprises 3. This is my mother. Her name is Rachel too, says the youngest, fairest-skinned woman in the room. She has been assigned to teach me to embroider. Pleased to meet you. I look from one Rachel to the other. Young Rachel sits beside me on a folding chair. Her ruddy red hair is as long as mine, but braided into a smooth, shiny rope that falls down the paisley print of her corduroy dress. She holds out a needle and thread. Her hands are the lily whites used to advertise gentle dishwashing soap. Mine, by comparison, looked like the scouring pad she would use on the crustiest cast iron fry pan. "What color do you want?" she asked. "What?" I rolled the needle between my leathery fingers. "What color thread do you want to start sewing with?" "What'd you say, dear?" Rachel the elder glances up from her own handiwork. "Show her the thread." Rachel looks at her mother. "Oh, right, dear." Rachel Mothers unhinges a round wicker sewing basket and pulls out a fist filled with rainbow skeins. The color I choose is determined in part by what stencil I design. I chose prior to sitting down to embroider. It is an outline of a kitty in overalls hanging laundry. I chose a robin's egg blue to begin with the kitten's head, thinking forward to embroidering the overalls in orange to complement the sewn scene. My eyesight is sharp as a pin, and my thickly calloused and grease-stained fingertips are nimble enough, but my hands with cuticles rough as bark shake because of working so much with the chainsaw, and the thread crashes outside the needle's eye. "It's okay. Here, let me help." Rachel takes my needle. In one motion, she pushes blue thread through the eye and then hands it back threaded. Rachel demonstrates a cross stitch across the outline of the kitten's head. I mimic the way she inserts and pulls the thread through fabric. Her stitches are as unflawed as her skin, mine as rough as an old tree butt. "More punch?" Rachel turns to her mother. "Oh, thank you, dear," she says, crossing her nylon ankles to bend over, pick up an extra and empty a cup. "More punch?" Rachel looks at me, a full cup lurking behind my hiking boots. "Oh, thank you, no, I'm fine," I lie, wanting to kick the cup and run out to my truck. After an hour, I've embroidered the kitten's head. I am pleased by my teacher's praise of my progress, but there's no way I'm going to attempt its overalls. I'm bored stiff. "Won't you stay for lunch?" Rhonda asks as I deliver a round of thank yous and goodbyes to the women I've just met, most of whom, if I ever meet again, will be at a glance in the aisles at Chester's. Just off the commons is a kitchen swarming with women in aprons. They push and pull dishes and pans in and out of two industrial ovens, setting bubbling casseroles on long tables dotted with bowls of coleslaw, pickle, beets, cottage cheese, mixed into green jello, and baskets of steamy biscuits, cake, pies, cookies, and more red punch will be on the sidelines. The smell of lunch makes my stomach growl. I am starving to eat food I don't have to cook with ingredients I would never buy, though the thought of eating among so many happy women I cannot identify with just takes my appetite away. "Oh, thank you, no, I've got errands to do," I lied to Rhonda, "but I would like to sit in your church for a bit." I glance at the two tall, pale doors, brass handles, and frosted glass window panes just across the kitchen hall. Rhonda grasps one handle and pulls the door. It is not locked. "Take your time. I'll be having lunch if you want to change your mind." The door shuts with an airy whisper behind me. The distance between the sacred altar and me is an eternity, but I proceed dead ahead, genuflect, look over my shoulder, question my Catholic reflexes in a Mormon church, and sit in a middle pew with an aisle view. The surrounding walls tower straight and tall as old-growth trees. Steely light steams down from oblong windows into this cavernous space. Splashes and pools on the aisle's blue runner. Here, I feel peace and compose, hidden from a stream of friendliness bubbling over in the hall behind. behind my back. Compared to the dark-paneled Catholic churches I've known, this church for late saints is almost sterile in comparison. Walls are white, woodwork blonde. There are no stations of cross or bloody Jesus faces spiked by thorns, sculpted mothers of immaculate conception, crucified bodies, shepherds with little lambs. There's just emptiness, filled with an aquamarine light. I kneel because I know in a place like this, like at the cabin, I have to face myself. And if it feels safer to do it when I'm not all the way on my feet, because there is less distance to fall from grace. Behind me there is laughter, the tinkle and clink of cutlery, china, a big lunch, and company I cannot keep. I am a little lost lamb that strayed from the flock, and no way am I going to even want to find my way back. Tempting as that meal is, I prefer my own company and get out of there. Happy voices and hot dish smells trailing me all the way back to Tank. Tank is the name of my truck. There is a familiar 2-mile hike with a loaded pack in shin-high snow, evergreen branches, flash dance, and icy slap of air. Later, cheese and crackers and a golden apple eaten before a fire, a cat on my lap. I worship the life I have. On going to town days, I cork down wax from tip to end, following the camber of my cross-country skis. I latch bindings over my snowmobile boots and ski a mile down the road and leave the skis propped under a tree and hike up over the last stretch to Tank. On the return trip, I bungee the skis to the top of the pack. It is easier to walk up in snow than to ski up in a full load. When I do not use them to go to town, I play on those skis I bought with earnings from doing line work factories in 2 years ago, a lifetime away. Yeah, I did do line assembly work in Shopper Toys. Remember Cootie and Don't Break the Ice and Don't Break the Camel's Back? I worked on an assembly line when I was 16, filling boxes with those plastic parts. Oh, also, you guys all have like really high-tech skis now. I had the bear binding skis, bear trap bindings where like they were unrelenting, and if you kind of fell the wrong way, you could seriously break an ankle. I didn't on those skis, but I did on Cubco bindings on downhill skis. Okay, so after homework and chores, when it is not snowing hard and there is enough daylight left to find my way back, I explore on those skis. A compass, an apple, 2 books of matches, a piece of pitch, and a fresh bandana in my pocket. I'm off on bright days, sometimes for 3 hours at a stretch. If it snowed the night before, visual clues are relied on to chart a course over the sage and juniper mountainsides, a rock crop here, a bright tip tree branch here. Trail marks I've relied on in the past are reduced to white humps and clumps. If it starts snowing hard when I'm out skiing, I double back while I can still see my tracks. Some afternoons, I shoulder the skis, ford the creek, and hike up the southern slope of my land, then ski down an abandoned log skid. Other days, I take off from below the cabin and manage a straight shot down the main road. At the first major bend, I veer left, plow through a meadow of sorts, and sloping toward the north side of the creek. For every hour it takes to ski down, it takes 2 to ski back up. One late December afternoon, I clamped the bear claw bindings, buckle thin leather safety straps, and take a slick run in tracks carved deep over by the past days. Ski poles tucked into my side, I crouch over and glide, gaining speed on the steady decline. The tracks are narrow, speeding too fast to execute even a simple snowplow without ending up in a rumpled body, flopping, bone-breaking crash. Maneuvering through such momentum, the only option is to continue down. I take it and shoot left into a field of obstacles in the form of non-negotiable evergreens. Here I must calibrate in a half-crotch the uncontrolled velocity I've gained in order to keep from crashing into the tree or farther below, the frozen creek. My knees wobble and bounce as I squat and apply the ski poles as handbrakes. Snow skirts my waist, flies in my face. The right basket hits a rock, breaks off. I'm still traveling out of control. Although low enough, my butt shares the fortune of the right ski pole. Instinctively, I twist to rub it, an adjustment slight enough to send me ass over end. I flip and flop sideways downhill until I slam entangled into skis, into a juniper, and lie on my back, flapping out a snow angel. Dried, frozen berries drop all around me, dusty blue irises from unblinking skyward. On Christmas Eve morning, I am straightening up the loft when I hear clomping on the porch. Luckily, my sense of propriety has remained steadfast during these days and months of living alone. I am brushed and washed, flossed and dressed in clean jeans and a spotless pullover and ready to receive an unexpected John. Remember, John's the boyfriend. John, red-cheeked and smiling. Later in the week, when I go to town, I will open the letter he mailed to tell me he'd be here for the holidays. So you guys are all younger when you're listening to this. This is when you communicate it with letters, and sometimes the letters didn't get to people for a week, 2 weeks. John leaves before New Year. I watch his back, hunched under the weight of his pack in disappointment. No, I will not go with him, and no, I will not accept the ring he has packed up along with his expectations of sharing my life. I do not follow him down the mountain where he has parked his new Jeep next to the tank. Before I can commit to a relationship with another person, I have to know who I am in relationship to myself. Okay, for you youngsters, I'm repeating this. Before I can commit to a relationship with another person, I have to know who I am in relationship to myself. This commitment at present includes a log cabin, a cat, and 80 acres with no room for another. Alone, I can see myself for who I am in this forest of trees. I just can't see myself growing by clinging to a loving relationship I can't define. I am a monkey. The second John is around the bend. My life returns to familiar patterns. I split wood, haul water, stoke the fire, read, write, draw. I take an eon deciding whether to eat a red or gold apple for lunch. Inspired by my first and only Mormon circle, I teach myself to cut and hem upholstery fabric into curtains that I draw closed at night to keep in the heat. I read the same page in a book over and over as my mind wanders, tethered by a line of thought, with more slack than tape. I analyze the color spectrum of fire: white, blue, yellow, orange, and red, and figure white must be the hottest because it is the center of all that burning. I discover there really are no two snowflake patterns alike because I've examined each and every one under a microscope. On a new typewriter ribbon, I hammer words until letters become shadows and then disappear. When the ribbons run dry, my chokehold on sanity steadies around the grip of a ballpoint pen. I use that pen to tally the costs of bringing an idea that came to me the night my mother died and I lost the home as I knew it. In a palm-sized 3-ring bounder, I've listed everything I bought to build this home, written every amount on both sides of the paper so the entries bleed through. Each entry takes me back to the day of the exchange, more occurring during the summer months when the days were warm and long, and at the very least I had Jim to talk to. I tally my scratches and figure that including the echo with labor and materials, I spent just over $2,000 to build the cabin, roughly 10% of what I paid for 80 acres. So this is on page 262 of the book, and here is the actual ledger that is reproduced. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. Each and every day at the cabin feels like a snowflake, different only by some minute measure of space or sequence of design. For variations, I change the time of day, split wood, and haul water from the creek. But each night it is the same. First I read, then draw, then read again, because what I've drawn keeps me awake. Mail is the only thing to break this routine. My only connection beyond these log walls. I write long letters to distant cousins who never write back. Letters I receive from leave me alone, get me seeing double all over again. She says she understands how she overstepped her foster mother boundaries, yet she can't understand why I won't move back in with her. What she fails to understand is that I'm living alone in this log cabin, and I draw the boundaries so no one can step on me again. Harriet, remember Harriet's my attorney that I hired to sue my relatives for embezzlement from my trust fund. Harriet sends me an update and monthly statement, each bill about half the cost of the echo. I pay her for my dwindling trust. I am battling a cause that will end only when I'm too broke to fight for my rights. Never much for writing. I don't even expect a letter from my brother or sister. My instructors mail back grades for assignments sent, rarely comments. I get only A's. Since I snubbed John, the only bright spot in my post office box is the familiar Ms. logo. In New York, in a warm, well-lit office, there is an editor poring over the handwritten journals I've poured my life into. I want to be in that place, or any place where light and heat can be switched on and off, and words come from voices, not books, a dime store pen, or shadowy typewriter ribbons. I know I need to return to society, but I am afraid to leave the only place I have to call home. I'll be back in May. I make finger tallies in the air. That's only 5 months. Take care of him. Tamarack does not cry, but I do when I hand him over to Jim. Since I'm unsure of where I'll live in a city named after another explorer, Tamarack will be safer with Jim and his family than with me in Eugene, where I plan to enroll in college with flat walls. You can drive her until I get back. I make my rounds of see you in the spring. Annabelle's and Dale's eyes get even roomier when I hug them for a goodbye. I wrap the echo in visqueen and hide it in the woods and hook bungee cords over the garbage can lids under the cabin. Lamp wicks are turned down and pails turned upside down. The silver bowl dims as I draw the hand-hemmed curtains over a window salvaged from a ghost town. Everything I will need in an uncertain future is loaded in a red backpack. I hike down the snowy road to a Blarney Green car as I've done before. The cabin is behind me. There is no lock on the door. Its log age as solid foundation to support a life I will never leave behind, where there, everything is all right. All right, we have just finished 263 pages of Babe in the Woods, Building a Life One Log at a Time. I'm not going to talk about the back part about the author, but I still have this cabin. I go there all the time. I want to talk a little bit about some of the original artwork and accoutrements. This is actually the little ledger I kept when I was building the cabin. One of the little things fell off, but I meticulously recorded every single expenditure. And what's interesting is when I look at this, I mean, I bought a wedge for like $2.75 or something, and it was a good metal wedge back then. And the last one I built or bought a couple of years ago was made in China. It cost about $30 and it broke right away. So I go to Eugene, where I enroll in junior college in journalism and art classes. I buy a little 1950s trailer, which has like moldy olive green carpet, and I live in that while I'm going to college. But the transition from being like this free spirit and healthy person in the mountains goes through a transition. So this is actually an image I drew. It's in the back of the book. And these are all the original images, repetograph pens, and this is about the transition I'm making from the cabin. Again, I'm 19 when I drew this. The ink is, the solid areas are with a paintbrush, and everything else is a repetograph pen. And if anybody's ever used a repetograph pen, you know they clog. This is one of the images that I did. It was a self-portrait. I might have shown it before, but it's when I looked at my reflection in the window up at the cabin. Again, it's all repetograph. So here's another transitional, leaving the cabin, going into places where there are wires and electricity, the austerity of it all. And this is interesting because I can't remember how I did this, but it must be a transition between about writing about it all. So anyway, we made it through in less than a year, one book. This is the longest book, but we will be going to Babe in the Woods, Self-Portrait. It's a shorter book, and it takes up when I'm in my 20s, and still being back at the cabin for the summers, dealing with bears, bathhouses, horny men, and anything else you can think of. So we hope to see you soon, next time, and stay hydrated. Bye-bye.